Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brittany Sanders. As Dr. Deanne Henshaw mentioned earlier, I will be talking about the revelations from focus groups about communications on developing practical flood preparedness guidance for Great Lakes communities. After analyzing the results of a survey covering home preparation and flood and storm resilience in the Great Lakes region, we developed a goal to create a guidance and tools that would help individuals better protect their homes and their families against increase in frequency and urgency, severity of storm and flood from a bottom-up perspective. Here is a model that you probably saw earlier, just covering our methods. Okay, so the overall structure of the guidance would be simple and easy to read, or so we thought. We assume breaking the material into critical infrastructures would help with overall clarity. Even more so, the question-based format would keep readers engaged and increase independent thinking in cases of emergency. We knew to include images and visual aids to maintain a sense of balance between word count and visual components. The assumption was if the guidance was simple, clear, digestible, then people would be more willing to read through and implement this guidance. Our next steps were to test if our assumption was correct. Next, we would partner with Michigan Sustainable Business Forum and other community leaders throughout Michigan, West Michigan, to begin rounds of focus groups. Our objective was to test the feasibility and readability of the guidance and accompanying tools. We asked a number of questions and engaged community members in discussing first impressions, the overall structure of the guidance, if it would be easy to use and implement. Across multiple rounds of community focus groups, it became clear that current resilience communication strategies are not aligned with how people actually process, prioritize, and engage with information. In terms of communication, four overarching themes revealed themselves: simplifying the information provided, restructuring the format and the images that were used, personalizing the guidance for each different audience, as well as addressing the disconnect between people, science, and flooding urgency. The focus groups revealed that the 22-page guidance, alongside supporting tools, lacked clarity, which influenced readers' ability to digest the information that was provided. Comments range from the guidance being too lengthy to the vocabulary used being too complex. Due to this, a number of people would not bother picking the guidance up, let alone reading through it. The call was made to simplify the entire original version. Participants demonstrated to us that an overload of information reduces engagement. The density of the guidance would overwhelm individuals. The guidance in its current state would not mobilize readers to take action, because often what influences people is readability and accessibility. We concluded that preparedness communication must prioritize clarity, readability, and ease of action. Visualization was a point of contention for the development of the guidance. At an early stage, we knew to implement images to compensate visual learners, as well as to keep readers engaged in the materials. Focus groups revealed that visual communication and resilience work is a bit more nuanced than we originally anticipated. Participants called for a careful consideration of the images and the infographics used, if they added to the message, if they complemented or took away from it. There was a general consensus to insert more photos, infographics, and charts to highlight key messaging. They emphasize that information may be more readily accepted depending on format, i.e., a guidebook versus a pamphlet, digital versions, or simple poster formats, etc. Focus groups revealed that visual communication improves accessibility across literacy levels. Even more, communication effectiveness depends on the delivery method as well as content because, and this is key, different formats reach different audiences. Therefore, effective resilience communication must be multimodal, visual, and adaptable across differing platforms and audiences. Communication resilience strategies often neglect to consider the diversity of its audience and or targeted community. The focus groups revealed that the fragmentation of our audience and how generational and or societal conditions shape the way in which an individual receives information as well as the type of content that they might need. In communicating climate resilience strategies, there is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Focus groups raised the concern for elderly and people with disabilities, children and parents, people who live in houses versus those who live in apartments. These differences demonstrated that a one-size-fits-all approach does not necessarily adhere to preparedness communication. It is ineffective. Audiences differ by age, housing situations, literacy, their trust in situations and the methods that they are getting the information, etc. If our guidance and tools were to prove effective, then we would have to ensure that our materials was personally relevant to individuals, thereby increasing engagement and preparedness behavior. Focus groups confirmed results of the survey in terms of people's lack of preparedness in case of flood. More than that was an overwhelming ignorance to flood prevalence presently and in the future, which is something that Dr. Henschel mentioned earlier. Although the neighborhoods in the Great Lakes watershed are near large bodies of water, there are a lot of people who believe that they are not in danger of flooding. Although, especially if the FEMA flood maps proved otherwise. In addition, participants shared that there is a lack of knowledge around the dangers of flooding, which is why fear tactics for some might prove effective. The response of disbelief and distrust substantiated the notion that when people are emotionally and physically distant from an event, it reduces risk perception. People respond more strongly to personal and immediate impacts. When communicating risk strategies, it should not only be informational, but emotional, psychological, and social as well. We must meet people where they are when communicating science, especially risk strategies. We thought resilience communication was about distributing information. The focus groups reveal it is actually about designing communication systems so people can absorb, they can apply, they can trust and relate to. In order to build those communication systems, we must first identify the real communication challenge and examine why individuals are not engaged with resilience communication. We concluded that preparedness communication now exists within a highly saturated environment where people process information quickly, visually, emotionally, and selectively. In the modern information environment, most people receive information via constant exposure to social media or rapid content consumption. The algorithmic engagement design of short reels, threads, instants, TikTok shorts, etc., has induced a culture of doom scrolling and visual first communication. Preparedness guidance no longer competes with just other emergency messaging. It competes with an entire digital ecosystem designed around speed, brevity, personalization, and emotional engagement. If resilience communication strategies are to be effective in this modern information environment, it must be adaptive, multimodal, and personable. I am sure that you're all aware that currently we are in a global literacy crisis. And literacy is not simply the ability to read text, it also involves processing, interpreting, and applying information under stress. Stress is a factor that is not often discussed or implemented in resilience communication strategies, as emergency communication often assumes calm processing. However, disasters and disaster planning can increase stress and reduce comprehension ability. Thus, comprehension during or before emergencies is not simply about literacy level. Stress, urgency, uncertainty, and cognitive overload all affect a person's ability to process information and make decisions. Consequently, a guidance as dense as ours becomes harder to use during a crisis. Emerging technologies such as AI tools and search engines are increasingly integrated into daily life and reshaping expectations around how information is consumed. People increasingly expect and are becoming more accustomed to receive concise, personalized, interactive, and immediately actionable information. It is this changing relationship with information retrieval that raises concerns for resilience communication, which has traditionally relied on static text-heavy guidance. Outside of grappling with the way information is retrieved, resilience communicators must also grapple with erosion of critical thinking due to excessive dependence on AI. Communicators must find a balance that allows individuals to critically think through emergent situations while transiting the channels individuals are most likely to receive information through. Finally, one communication strategy cannot effectively reach all audiences. It is important that resilience communicators understand each targeted group, their informational needs, and their preferred channels and trusted sources, sorry. One of the clearest revelations from the focus groups was that resilience communication cannot rely on a single strategy, platform, or format. I already said that. Sorry. Participants consistently demonstrated that people process information differently depending on factors such as age, accessibility needs, trust, housing situations, technological familiarity, and lived experiences. These were just a couple of the preferences that the community members explain to us or show concern for. These conversations reinforce an important realization. The purpose of the communication, the target population, and the context of the emergency all influence which communication channel will be most effective. The focus groups demonstrated that future resilience work must move beyond distributing information, instead prioritizing the way that communities engage with, interpret, and apply that information. Preparedness communication must be adaptable, accessible, and audience-specific rather than relying on a one-size-fits-all approach. Effective resilience strategies will likely require multimodal communication systems that combine visual, digital, interpersonal, and community-based forms of outreach. The findings also emphasize the importance of trust, personal relevance, and emotional connection in motivating preparedness behavior. As environmental risks continue to increase, resilience communication must evolve alongside changing technologies, media habits, and community needs. Ultimately, strengthening resilience will depend not only on scientific accuracy, but also on the ability to communicate information in ways communities can absorb, trust, and respond to. Going forward, what's most important for us is hearing the feedback from the focus groups and changing accordingly. Currently, I am in the process of restructuring our guidance and reformatting it. we have partnered with People Over Petrol to redesign the guidance to be more accessible for people with disabilities, meaning all outgoing materials will adhere to accessibility guidelines, i.e. font size, font style, layout, etc. Also, where before each section was organized by walking around, questions to ask to identify vulnerabilities. How can you protect your home? How can you protect your family? We've simplified it to just include the guidance, the overall general information, and what to do before, during, and after flood and storm. We've also design one pagers. For example, we have a good, better, best scenario type of situation going on. In the works are talks about creating a short reel series to inform people on the dangers of flooding, etc. Okay. To conclude, this research is about adapting resilience communication to evolving information behavior. As communication systems continue evolving, resilience communication must remain flexible and open to adopting new channels of engagement. To reiterate, science communicators and resilience workers must not rely only on what information communities need, but also how different groups receive, process, and engage with the information itself. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your talk. We have 4 minutes, so time for questions.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciated you focusing on this aspect of doing the resilience work, which is the aesthetic and the cognitive side of it. So, the way people's brains process information in social science, and I think natural science is like even worse. Like we're really good at producing like long text-heavy documents loaded with charts and tables that not even our colleagues want to read. So, I guess my question is like, if you're thinking about, well, everybody's scrolling, so it's like you got to move in that. I think so. I mentioned in my presentation, I work with designers and stuff. When I started working with designers, I started noticing that they do things, they're communicating information, but they're doing it in a way that's just a lot more fun, and a lot more interesting to look at, and also more concise and all this kind of stuff. So just felt like we just had a lot to learn from them. But I feel like if you're trying to compete with social media or AI, and were your graphics on AI? Were they AI generated? That was my question.
No.
Okay. I almost feel like that's the wrong way because you can't compete with that. I feel like the other things you've been talking about actually all day, which is the participatory stuff, the experiential stuff, the hands-on, the in-person, of course, is more time consuming, and you're by definition going to get fewer people at a time. But I think that in combination with having effective, visuals and stuff is the kind of thing that really tends to like sort of break through with people. So I guess it's not really a question, but I mean, I guess my question would be, do you feel like if you go down the road of trying to compete with the social media attention economy, that really you're going to have to compromise certain things in order to, if that's what your goal is, that maybe you need to break that cycle and do, something else.
Yeah, I don't think our goal is to compete with social media per se. I think it's to be more adaptive. If people are learning and accepting these new methods, then I think we should too. Well, yeah, that's why we have to have multiple versions. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, great work, great presentation. So you talked a lot about how different people prefer different methods of delivery. Maybe it's age. Did you ever run into, or like your focus groups, did they ever reveal like how they got their information on flooding or like natural hazards? And did you notice maybe some sort of like political leaning in that? And how do you think that will affect your method of delivery moving forward?
So I think specifically for our focus groups in Michigan, because we went through Michigan Sustainable Business Forum and other partners in Michigan, they were already in contact with these type of people, so they kind of came in knowing kind of what we were going to be discussing. And a lot of them were older and they kind of already knew, they've already had experience with these type of things. And so I think, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, just a quick clarifying question on your preparedness guidance. Is the focus of your guidance on mass emergency community communication, like mass text alerts and notifications and sirens, or is it more on community preparedness, looking at community-wide solutions as well as individual solutions?
Yeah, so our guidance is bottom up. So we kind of think about it from an individual perspective. And so we think through scenarios of what could potentially happen in a flood and what you could do better to protect your home as well as protect yourself, make it more resilient. It's not on like a mass text formatting or anything like that. We would hope we were able to get our guidance to them prior to flooding via multiple outreach methods. We've been talking about like churches, schools, etc.
Yeah, just for clarification. And some of the terminology.
It's not intended for emergency management, it's intended for preparation. Is that
Right. Well,